Hello, everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight, author of The Voices of Hockey, Broadcasters Reflect on the Fastest Game on Earth, coming to you from the southwest corner of Washington State, 2,454 miles from Little Caesars Arena. Now, folks, it's been about a day or so that we've had to stew over Tuesday's loss at Florida, a game that was basically in the jaws of victory, and we clutched defeat from it, but we've stewed. I've stewed, I know. I don't know what's worse, folks. Is it worse to be booed out of your own arena or to be cheered out of the other team's arena as you move to the next city? I think that's we're having a little bit of both of those this season, and I don't know which is a better feeling. But hopefully the Red Wings can make up for that. So we got a game against Tampa Bay. One thing to think about is that looking at the two over the last 10 games, the Lightning are 4-6, and I think they're 1-6 in their last 7. So I think they had like a 3-game winning streak before they started losing. So we're 4-5-1. So we're only just a slight, like a half a game better than that. Both teams have been struggling. That's really all that comes down to it. So it's to me, it's a kind of a heads or tails on tonight's game. But I feel like Tampa Bay probably has the advantage. Injury-wise, though, this is one thing I'm looking at and with optimism and hope. Okay, so our injuries are Kopp and Larks and Perron. Perron's probably not even going to play this season. But obviously the two big ones that are on everybody's minds is Larks and Kopp. Okay, we'll talk about that in the last segment as well. But going over to Tampa Bay side, they got Radish, Cernak, Paul, Lilleberg, James, and Crozier all out. Now, thinking of Cernak and Radish, that's one of the things I want to look as a positive for this game because they're the tougher ones. So if we can show a little bit of toughness and maybe get in their heads, if we can get Benny to throw a few hits here or there, even Mo, obviously we want Mo to get tough. And I've seen Lucas Raymond get tough a little bit too. Let's see how Falk can do to show a little bit of toughness and intimidation himself. Because with both Radish and Cernak out, that creates a little bit of an advantage for us. Obviously, Hagel's still in there, and he's one of the more intimidating players they've got. But if you take out a couple of those players who are prone to hitting and blocking and all that, you may create a little bit of a space for yourself and might open up the game a little bit and get into their zone, get across that blue line and actually kind of have a heyday. We've got our weaknesses, obviously, right now. We'll talk about that in the fourth segment, but I'm just looking at some of the positives. Obviously, they still have the stars out there. They've got, they got Point. Kucherov obviously is one of the best players in the league and has been for the last decade and then some. So we gotta just kind of have that hope that they're going to continue to reel, maybe just a little worse than we're reeling. I think that's probably their hope as well. They're probably thinking Red Wings are coming in. They're 4-5-1 their last 10. Maybe we just need this win to boost our confidence and get us back on the winning side. Well, we're feeling the same way right now after that loss at Florida. So just looking at it, the Lightning are 19-11 at home. Wings are 18-11-4 on the road, and then versus the division, the Wings are 11-6-2, and Tampa Bay is 11-5-1. Very similar records on a couple of these things versus the division, how they've been doing in their last 10. These are very interesting figures considering the fact that the Lightning started to look like they're pulling away a little bit more from the Red Wings, but they're really not that far ahead of us as it is. I think they're only 3 points up on us, but still, it's a mental game right now, and the last time we played them, they cleaned our clock pretty good. The first time we played them was while they were struggling. The second time when they beat us was while we were struggling. So we're just kind of like, now we're both struggling. So really, how do we make heads or tails out of this one? I don't know. It'll be an interesting game to watch. Hopefully we come out with a win and try to set up a 2-game winning streak for once. So it's Thursday, which means it is Throwback Thursday. And for Throwback Thursday, I'm going to go back to the 95-96 season. Mainly because there are a lot of positives to take from that season. Obviously, we didn't get the ultimate goal. We had to wait until the next season to get that ultimate goal and that ultimate Stanley Cup glory. But in the 95-96 season, we still made for a lot of good theater. It was a great season for the Red Wings. The previous record for wins in a season was held by the 76-77 Montreal Canadiens, and they had 60 wins. They also had 132 points. So the Red Wings didn't break the point point threshold. They came up with 131, but they did get not only victory 61, but they got 62 as well. And it was a record that would hold for, until the 2018-2019 season when Tampa Bay tied it. And then it was broken by the 22-23 Boston Bruins. But looking at that season, and that game, so the second to last, the Red Wings won 4 straight to end up with 62 wins at the end of the season. Now, this was a time when they didn't have shootout losses or overtime losses. You could win or lose in overtime, but you didn't get a point from it. So basically, well, you got a point, obviously, if you won. What kind of logic is that? But there was, basically, you had to play till there was, now you play until somebody loses. Now there's a shootout. Before, there was just the 5 minutes, and it was resulted in a tie. We don't have those rules anymore. So there's a couple of games. They only lost 1 game in overtime all season. So they had 7 ties. So this is that argument I had a few months back, in that, if the Red Wings in 95-96 were playing by today's rules, how different of a team would they be, and how different the dynamic would it be? Would they be up there with Boston with the 65 wins? I think they would have. When you consider a few of the ties that they had, and basically being forced to have a shootout in those instead of settling for the tie, getting the 2 instead of the 1, getting the win instead of the tie, I feel like there was about 3 or 4 that would have gone the Red Wings' way there. And plus the overtime losses, and not ties. They could have gotten 2 or 3 overtime losses, a couple more points. So they could have basically eclipsed them both eclipsed them. This is a team that was yet to basically form 26 years later, but still, they could have been holding on to that record pretty tightly and still holding on to it if these circumstances were different. Obviously, a lot of people in Boston are like, nah, whatever. Well, guess what? You only won 3 games in the postseason that followed, so what are you even talking about? What are we even trying to make out of this? I'm just talking about a regular season situation. The Red Wings obviously got the monkey off their back the next season, but still, what a season. And this win number 61 took place against, this was against Chicago. And Dubinsky basically opened the scoring for the Blackhawks. And then these are some familiar names, but they weren't on these weren't some of these names weren't around for long, but they're still Hall of Famers. Paul Coffey, Paul Coffey has a resume that is as long as the Declaration of Independence. And he basically was factoring in for us in that 95-96 season. He opened up the scoring for the Red Wings to tie it at 1. Then you got a couple of more goals basically to make it 3-1 by Chicago. And then we had 4 straight goals from the Red Wings. And as far as those goals go, Lidstrom and Yzerman, Coffey was assisted by Lidstrom and Yzerman on that game tying one, and then Amante basically took the lead, and then Murphy basically tacked on an insurance goal on a power play. There was so much special teams in this game. I think there were 4 power play goals, and then there was a shorthanded goal. So looking at the power play goal, so that first power play goal, like I said, Murphy there with a power play goal to make it 3-1 Chicago. Well, then this is where the Red Wings special teams just takes over and dominates. There's 2 straight power play goals from Larionov and Keith Primo. So there we go. One more Hall of Famer. Coffey's one. Larionov's another. Lidstrom's another. Yzerman's another. Okay, and then Keith Primo basically was followed up by a shorthanded goal from Coffey. So there we go, special teams ruling the night once again, and they took the lead. And then there was an empty netter by Chris Draper. I don't think Chris Draper will really make it into the Hall of Fame one day, but he was part of a Hall of Fame team there with the Red Wings that year. So, and who assisted him on that empty netter? Stevie Y. There we go, one more Hall of Famer to list. So 2 days later, the Red Wings, that was win number 61, passing the 1976-77 Canadiens, and then they tacked it on for good measure, I call it, and in game number 82 to make it 62 wins, and it was basically a pummeling of Dallas at that point. Dallas was a couple of years removed from really making a push for things, and they were 3 years removed from their Stanley Cup, or not removed, they're 3 years from. It was happening 3 years after. So they were pretty much an easy target for the Red Wings to kind of solidify that season with the 62nd win and 131st point. So always good to look at. Obviously, we don't talk too much about the way that season really ended in the postseason with a Game 6 loss against Colorado and Chris Draper getting his jaw wired shut thanks to Claude Lemieux. But there still was plenty of excitement and plenty of antics going on throughout to make it a memorable one as far as the offense that team really put together. And really, honestly, when you sit there and look at these box scores and see how many of these players are in the Hall of Fame now, it's just fun to look at that. So I did a segment a couple weeks ago called Channeling Nash, and I'm going to return to that segment because I feel like just putting that good juju out there, that energy, that vibe, always can help with our chances for making the postseason. I know I was a little bitter in yesterday's show and saying, enough of this talk of let's just get into the postseason. Yes, we want to get into the postseason. We want to make that show, give the fans what they've been wanting, but really the whole point of all this is to build. But if we're going to get into the playoffs, let's humor me a little bit and let's channel that John Nash, that a beautiful mind, inspiring a genius man. So here we go. Looking at things right now with the remaining games that we have left. We have 17 games left. We have 8 of them against playoff teams. Okay. Taking us out of the equation and just talking about the moons that orbit us in this whole quest for the playoffs. We're going to call these teams that basically help us to decide our fate. We'll call them our orbit and our moons here. So we got 5 moons here. We got Tampa Bay, we got Buffalo, we got Boston, we got Montreal, and we have Columbus. Because basically, like I've said, I feel like more likely than not, the top 5 teams of the Atlantic are going to be the ones to make the playoffs, and the 3 top teams from the Metropolitan will basically be it to make the full 8. Throwing a monkey wrench into that theory, though, is Columbus right now because they're only a couple points back of the Red Wings, and I think they have a game in hand. So they are threatening to maybe leapfrog us into that playoff bubble and bounce us out of it. So I'm counting them as one of our moons that are orbiting around our playoff chances. So going into detail about those other 5 teams, Tampa Bay has 19 games left, and 13 of those are against playoff teams. So that bodes pretty well for us. 2 of them are against us. Buffalo, they have 17 left, and they have 8 against playoff teams and only 1 against us. Montreal has 18 games left. 9 of them are against playoff teams, so that bodes a little better for us. 1 of them is against us. Boston, 18 games left, 8 of them against playoff teams. 1 of those is against us as well. Columbus, this is another one that I feel bodes well for us, is that Columbus has 18 games left, and 11 of those are against playoff teams, 1 of those being us. So we can steer our own ship in this situation, obviously. We're not having any kind of comfortable lead, but we're still 3 points up, and we can really, like I said, steer our own ship, whether or not into the playoffs or not, because a lot of the road to the playoffs are going to go through these 5 cities, 6 cities if you include ours. So we'll just have to see who shows up against us, who we show up against outside of these playoff teams, to make, basically solidify our chances in those other things, and then basically get a couple of those wins that maybe we're not expected to, but might put us over some kind of hump at some point or another. So there you go. There's John Nash, and we have the 5 orbits surrounding us and our playoff journey. Close out the segment and the show today. Just want to basically say that, Andrew Kopp being out, Larks being out, that brings us down to 4 centers. And our 4 centers are this. Okay, so we got Appy, Big Ras, Finns, and Casper. Those are our 4 centers. Their combined goals are 29, and their combined assists are 38, for a combined total of points of 67 combined total points. Larks and Kopp. Okay, their combined goals are, 37. 28 of those are Larkins. And their combined assists are, that's 58. So basically their combined points are 92 combined points between those two, just between those two. So we're talking about 67 between 4 players and 92 between 2. What does that tell you? Folks, we're not going to rely on the center so much as far as the point production. It really hasn't been that way most of the season anyway. If you think about it, how many times do we have when JVR was on a line with or let's say Kopp? A lot of times when we got Kopp on the line with DeBrincat and Kane. When you see either one of those goals scored by either Kane or DeBrincat, obviously the assist was on one of the other ones, but Kopp wasn't in the situation a lot. You'd see Mo on there, Ben Sherratt, whoever. So it's not the end of the world as far as like from a point standpoint, but it is the end of the world if you think about being able to set up these plays. And so being able to set up plays for people like JVR, because I think JVR may have to like take some of this into his own hand. We see what kind of sweet passes he's able to make. So without centers being, without Larkin and Kopp, our two best centers, for however long they're going to be out, it's time to get creative. It's time for us to have some of those Disney movie moments from players like Finns. Marco Kasper, I feel, has been pretty solid. I think a lot of people have kind of been a little more negative to him. I think they're talking a lot more about JT Compher, and Big Rass. I don't really have too much bad to say about Big Rass either. I will say that Appy is non-existent. And a lot of the people on these chat rooms are saying the same thing. So I kind of look to, Big Rass to maybe step up a little bit, Finns too. And but Appy, I'm not really seeing in that category. And also besides Appy, Kasper, I see stepping up a little bit too. But really, it's going to come down to the players like Raymond, Cat, Kane, Sider, and now Falk. Even Benny might a little bit, just to get some offense, and JVR obviously too. Let's not forget JVR and the sweet magic he's been putting on there. This class of 2007 has been a tale of two cities this year. It seems like JVR. Obviously, we've had all the spotlight moments for Kaner, and all the accolades he's been getting. But JVR has been the one who's been making the highlight reel on SportsCenter. Let's face it. So it's been a great resurgence for this class of 2007 today, or not today, but this season. So let's hope for a little bit more of that. Folks, we'll have to have a little bit of a recap tomorrow going into the weekend of tonight's game, and a preview of Saturday's game against Dallas. It's going to be another tough one. We got two tough ones here before we go back to LCA, but in the meantime, LGRW from the PNW.